Good evening, everyone. Tonight we step into a journey about the hidden weight of words and how they can build or destroy a leader in a single breath. Right now, picture yourself in a dimly lit room, only the glow of the screen before you. Imagine tomorrow, standing before your team, and one wrong word slips out. Could you survive the collapse of trust that follows? So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And let me know in the comments where you are and what time it is, because I want to feel that connection with you in this very night. Now, turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for a bit of gentle background noise, and let us begin our journey together. The first forbidden word in leadership is small, sharp, and deceptively innocent: can't. It slides out of the mouth as naturally as a sigh, yet every time a leader speaks it, something invisible fractures. Trust weakens, confidence leaks away. A team begins to doubt not only their leader's power, but also their own capacity to win. Imagine a general standing before his soldiers on the eve of battle and whispering, "We can't do this." No blood has been shed, but the war is already lost. The poison of can't is not in the sound of the letters, it is in the surrender it signals. Saying can't is like slamming a door shut before you even test the handle. It is failure accepted before the first step is taken. A leader who utters can't shrinks before the eyes of those who follow. Instead of becoming the spark of courage, they become the echo of fear. Picture a young founder standing in a cluttered garage, prototypes scattered around, wires tangled like vines. His small team watches him, weary but hopeful. One of them asks, "Can we really launch this by next month?" If he says, "We can't," what happens? Shoulders slump, energy dies, and tomorrow's effort evaporates before it begins. But if he says, "We will find a way," even if the path is hidden, the room recharges. One word makes the difference between a group collapsing in defeat and a group surging into action. Leadership is measured not just by strategy, but by language. Teams read every phrase, every tone, every choice of word as signals of possibility or limitation. Leaders who use the language of restriction infect their teams with restraint. Leaders who replace can't with how open doors again. The brain is naturally wired to solve problems. Say can't, and the brain closes down. Say how, and the imagination lights up. Skeptics argue that honesty sometimes demands acknowledging that something truly cannot be done. Isn't a leader obligated to face reality? Yes, but reality does not require surrender. There is a difference between reckless optimism and disciplined framing. Instead of saying, "We can't compete with bigger companies," a leader can say, "Our size forces us to be faster, leaner, and smarter than bigger companies." Both statements admit the challenge. One shuts down vision, the other fuels it. History is proof that can't is the most fragile word ever spoken. The Wright brothers were told men can't fly, yet their fragile machine lifted from the ground. Martin Luther King Jr. was told civil rights can't be won peacefully, yet his dream reshaped a nation. Elon Musk was told reusable rockets can't exist, and now boosters descend from the sky with mechanical grace. Every great shift began with someone refusing to surrender to can't. So why do leaders still cling to it? Because can't is comfortable. It lowers expectations. It shields the ego from risk. It excuses inaction. If a leader says, "We can't," and failure comes, they appear wise. If they say, "We can," and stumble, their credibility feels threatened. Weak leaders prefer the comfort of safety over the discomfort of responsibility. strong leaders reverse the choice. You can test this in daily life. The next time you feel the urge to say, "I can't manage this project," try instead, "I will manage this project with help," or "I will manage this step by step." Watch how not only your energy, but also the energy of those listening transforms. Leadership is not about pretending obstacles do not exist. It is about showing that obstacles do not define destiny. Think about the words your people hear. If they hear, "We can't afford this," they shrink. If they hear, "We will find a way to fund this," they stretch. If they hear, "We can't hire the right people," they resign to mediocrity. If they hear, "We will attract the right people," they begin searching. The world does not bend to language alone, but language decides whether a team looks down in defeat or looks up in determination. Some will still protest, but aren't some things truly impossible? Of course, but time, effort, and experimentation prove limits far better than the premature judgment of one person. By erasing "can't," you delay defeat long enough to give creativity the chance to surprise you. Now, here is your challenge. Starting this week, erase "can't" from your vocabulary. Replace it with, "How can we?" to ignite problem solving. "What if we?" to invite creativity. "We will figure this out." To restore confidence, carry a small notebook. Each time you or your team say "can't," write it down. Then rewrite the statement without that word. Over days and weeks, watch how your mind shifts from surrender to solution. This is not a trick. This is rewiring the very lens through which you and your people see possibility. Leadership is not about controlling every outcome. It is about controlling the story that drives people toward outcomes. If you choose words of defeat, you lead people into defeat. If you choose words of determination, you lead them into battle with courage. So I leave you with this question. Tomorrow, if your team listens to your every word, would you dare let "can't" slip from your mouth? Or will you choose the word that shuts the door, or the one that unlocks the future? The second forbidden word in leadership wears a mask of humility, but hides a core of weakness. Maybe. It sounds harmless, even gentle. A leader says, "Maybe we'll try this," or "Maybe we can meet next week." Yet beneath that soft surface, the word corrodes authority like rust, eating away at iron. Maybe is the vocabulary of hesitation, the soundtrack of indecision, the slow drip that drowns confidence in any leader's voice. Picture this. You're part of a team that's been waiting all week for clarity. A major client is on the line, the project deadline looms, and all eyes turn to the leader. They open their mouth, and instead of a firm direction, out comes, "Maybe we can deliver by Friday." Do you feel inspired? Do you feel secure? Or do you feel lost, floating in uncertainty? A leader who says "maybe" leaves the team stranded between yes and no, between action and paralysis. Why is "maybe" so toxic? Because leadership lives and dies by clarity. People can rally behind a yes, they can even respect a no, but "maybe" gives them nothing. It is like being asked to march into battle with no map, no orders, and no assurance of victory or retreat. Confusion does not inspire loyalty. It breeds doubt, frustration, and resentment. Leaders often use "maybe" as a shield. They think it buys them time, softens their message, or avoids offending anyone. But here's the brutal truth. "Maybe" doesn't protect you. It exposes you. It tells your team you are afraid to commit, afraid to take ownership, afraid to plant a flag and say, "This is where we stand." And if the leader is afraid, why should the team be brave? History offers painful examples of hesitation disguised as caution. Think of leaders who faced critical moments, moments demanding decisive choices, and instead wavered. Entire campaigns collapsed not because of the enemy's strength, but because of a commander's maybe. Napoleon once said, "The battlefield is a scene of constant chaos. The one who controls that chaos, both his own and the enemy's, wins." Notice what he didn't say. The one who answers with maybe. Yet let's be fair. Some argue maybe is honest. Life is uncertain and leaders don't always have answers. Isn't it better to admit uncertainty than to pretend? Yes, but honesty does not require weakness. There's a powerful difference between saying, "Maybe we can do this," and saying, "We don't yet know the answer, but we will decide by tomorrow." The first leaves everyone dangling. The second admits uncertainty but sets direction. Leadership doesn't demand omniscience. It demands commitment to clarity. Consider this contrast. A CEO is asked whether the company will pivot into a new market. One answers, "Maybe we'll see." The other answers, "We are studying the opportunity and will make a firm decision in 2 weeks." Both leaders may not know the future, but only one maintains authority. The first bleeds respect. The second builds it. So what do strong leaders do instead of maybe? They replace it with commitments anchored in time and intention. Instead of, "Maybe we'll try this," they say, "We will test this idea for 2 weeks and then evaluate." Instead of, "Maybe we can meet," they say, "We will meet Thursday at 10 a.m. Every time you remove maybe, you remove fog from the battlefield. And every time you remove fog, your people see the path forward and trust you more for it. Think about your own experience. How many times have you walked away from a meeting unsure of what was decided? How many times did maybe hang in the air, leaving everyone nodding but no one moving? Compare that to the meetings where the leader said, "Here's the plan, here's the deadline, here's who owns what." Which team executed better? Which team respected their leader more? Action is the cure for hesitation. To eliminate maybe from your leadership, adopt 3 replacements. Replace with clarity. Instead of "maybe we'll meet," say "we will meet." Replace with timeline. Instead of "maybe we can finish," say "we will decide by Friday." Replace with ownership. Instead of "maybe we should," say, "I will lead this effort." The shift feels small, but the ripple is massive. Teams stop drifting. They start acting. They trust that even if the path changes, the leader will not leave them in limbo. Here's your challenge. This week, notice every maybe you speak. Write it down, then reframe it into a statement of commitment. You'll feel resistance because maybe is comfortable. It lets you dodge risk. But leadership is not about comfort. It is about clarity in discomfort. So I'll leave you with this question. If tomorrow your team hangs on your every word, will you hide behind maybe? Or will you step into the authority that only clear decisions can give? The third forbidden word seems harmless at first, almost dreamy, but it quietly erodes leadership from the inside out. Someday. It floats in conversation like a soft promise. Someday we'll expand into new markets. Or, someday we'll fix that system. Yet every time a leader leans on someday, they push vision into the shadows of procrastination. They trade today's momentum for tomorrow's illusion, and in doing so, they betray the very urgency that leadership demands. Picture this scene. A small company is bleeding customers because of a broken process. The team gathers, frustrated and eager for direction. The leader stands at the front, sighs and says, "Yes, this is an issue, and someday we'll deal with it." Instantly, shoulders drop. The spark fades. The team walks away knowing the problem won't be solved. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe never. Someday becomes code for not important. The danger of someday is that it disguises itself as hope. It sounds like vision, but it is actually delay. Real leaders know that action delayed is opportunity lost. Every time someday is spoken, the clock ticks, competitors advance, and the window of possibility narrows. Great leadership is not about having perfect timing. It is about refusing to wait for perfect timing. History punishes leaders who rely on someday. Think of companies that ignored innovation, whispering, "Someday we'll catch up." Kodak said it about digital cameras. Blockbuster said it about streaming. Nokia said it about smartphones. Someday was the lullaby that put them to sleep, while rivals rewrote the future. Their leaders thought they had time. They didn't. And yet, some will defend someday. They'll argue that patience is a virtue, that timing matters, that rushing can be reckless. True, but patience is not the same as procrastination. A leader can say, "We will act when conditions align," but that is not someday. That is strategy. The difference lies in accountability. Strategy has deadlines. Someday has none. Now imagine the opposite. A leader stands before their team and declares, "We will fix this system by the end of the month." Instantly, energy rises. The commitment creates urgency, urgency drives focus, and focus delivers results. Even if the timeline slips, progress is made. Action replaces apathy. Vision becomes reality. This is the difference between leaders who say someday and leaders who say today. Teams crave direction anchored in time. They don't need every answer, but they need to know when decisions will be made and when actions will begin. A leader who says someday starves the team of that clarity. In its place, they feed them uncertainty, which grows into doubt, disengagement, and eventually, departure. Talented people will not stay under leaders who live in someday. They leave for leaders who live in now. So how do you kill someday in your own leadership? Replace it with specific commitments. Instead of, "Someday we'll expand," say, "We will launch into 2 new markets within 18 months. Instead of, "Someday I'll mentor you," say, "We will schedule a mentorship session this week." Instead of, "Someday we'll solve this," say, "We will solve this by Friday, even if imperfectly." The shift from someday to specifics is the shift from fantasy to leadership. This week, challenge yourself to catch every someday that leaves your lips. Write it down. Then ask, when? If you cannot attach a timeline, then it is not leadership. It is a dream. Dreams inspire, but deadlines deliver. Your people don't follow you for dreams alone. They follow you for direction. Here is the test. Imagine your legacy being summarized in one sentence. They always had a vision, but it was always for someday. Would you be proud of that? Or would you rather be remembered as the leader who dared to say, "We start today"? So I ask you this. When your next chance arrives, will you bury it under someday, or will you turn the promise of later into the power of now? The fourth forbidden word wears the disguise of effort, but in truth, it is the language of surrender. Try. It sounds humble, even noble. "We'll try our best," or "I'll try to make it happen." Yet everyone who hears it knows the hidden meaning. Failure already has permission to walk through the door. Try is not commitment. It is escape. Leaders who lean on try weaken their own authority and tell their teams that mediocrity is acceptable. Picture this. A leader stands before their team after a critical setback. Morale is shaky, deadlines loom, and people are desperate for direction. If that leader says, "We'll try to recover," what happens? Heads shake. Energy drops. The team hears the unspoken truth. We might not make it, and I'm not willing to own the outcome. But if the leader says, "We will recover, and here's how," the same room ignites with resolve. The word choice transforms the atmosphere from resignation to determination. Why is try so poisonous? Because leadership is about commitment. The world respects yes or no, but try is nothing. It is a placeholder for doubt. It tells followers that even the leader does not fully believe in the mission. When soldiers hear their general say, "We'll try to win," the war is already lost. When employees hear their CEO say, "We'll try to grow this quarter," they know the target will be missed. Some defend try as realism. They argue it is better to acknowledge uncertainty than to make promises you can't guarantee. But here's the paradox. Leaders are not judged by guarantees. They are judged by commitment. Nobody expects perfection, but everyone expects resolve. To lead is to say, "We will move forward," and then to adapt when reality pushes back. Try is not adaptation. It is hesitation dressed as humility. Consider the words of Yoda in Star Wars, immortal and simple: do or do not. There is no try. It may sound like fiction, but the truth is eternal. Leaders who try never inspire loyalty. Leaders who commit, whether they succeed or fail, earn respect. Look through history. Winston Churchill never told Britain, "We'll try to endure." He said, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight in the fields, we shall never surrender." John F. Kennedy did not declare, "We'll try to put a man on the moon." He said, "We choose to go to the moon." Those words, absolute and uncompromising, ignited nations. Try would never have done the same. So what should you say instead? Replace try with definitive statements of action. Instead of, "We'll try to hit this target," say, "We will hit this target, and here is the plan." Instead of, "I'll try to be there," say, "I will be there," or "I will not be there." Instead of, "Let's try to improve," say, "We will improve, starting with this step." The difference seems small, but the effect is profound. Teams stop questioning whether you believe in the mission. They stop wondering if they should give half effort or whole effort. They hear certainty, and certainty breeds commitment. Now test yourself. Listen to your own speech this week. How often do you say, "I'll try"? Write it down. Then replace it with "I will" or "I will not." At first it feels uncomfortable, even dangerous, because commitment removes escape routes. But that is precisely what leadership demands. When you close the door to escape, you open the door to true performance. Remember this. Try is a word of the average. Anyone can try. True leaders do. Leadership is not about leaving back doors open. It is about burning the boats, removing retreat, and declaring with absolute conviction, "We will." So here's the question you must face. Tomorrow, when your people look to you for direction, will you give them a leader who only tries, or will you give them a leader who commits without compromise? The fifth forbidden word in leadership is sharp, final, and devastating. Impossible. It may be spoken with authority, but it drains authority the moment it leaves a leader's lips. To say impossible is to declare the death of imagination, to extinguish the fire of innovation before it even sparks. Great leaders know that impossible is never a fact. It is only a temporary opinion. often proved wrong by those bold enough to challenge it. Picture a team of engineers gathered around a table, wrestling with a design problem. They've tried 3 approaches, each one failing. The leader leans back, shakes their head, and sighs. It's impossible. Instantly, the room collapses. Shoulders slump, creativity vanishes, and the hunt for solutions ends. With one word, the leader has slammed the door on progress. Yet if that same leader had said, "We haven't solved it yet, but we will," the entire atmosphere would shift. Hope would return, and the team would rise to the challenge again. Impossible is seductive because it feels safe. It allows leaders to escape the burden of risk, to avoid responsibility for failing attempts. It's easier to declare impossible than to keep pushing into uncertainty. But safety is the enemy of growth. Leadership is not about avoiding risk. It is about guiding people through it. A leader who says impossible is not protecting their team. They are betraying them. History laughs at the word impossible. For centuries, people said human flight was impossible. Then the Wright brothers rose into the sky. They said the 4-minute mile was impossible. Then Roger Bannister shattered it, and within a year others followed. They said reusable rockets were impossible. Now they land gracefully on launch pads. Every advancement in history is an insult to the word impossible. Leaders who cling to it chain themselves to the past, while others create the future. But let's anticipate the objection. Isn't it reckless to ignore limits? Aren't some things truly impossible? Of course. But limits reveal themselves through relentless effort, not through premature surrender. Declaring impossible up front is not realism. It is laziness disguised as wisdom. A wise leader acknowledges difficulty but refuses to pronounce final judgment until every path is tested. Consider the mindset shift. Weak leaders say, "It's impossible." Strong leaders say, "What would make it possible?" The first closes the door, the second opens it. Weak leaders silence creativity. Strong leaders provoke it. The difference is not technology or resources. It is language. Words decide whether a team leans back in despair or leans forward in discovery. In practice, erasing impossible requires discipline. When you feel the word on your lips, pause. Replace it with "not yet solved." Keeps hope alive. "We haven't found the way" invites problem solving. "Let's test another path" sparks resilience. These phrases don't deny reality. They simply refuse to close the book before the story is written. And often, the breakthrough comes one page after others would have quit. Think about your own team. How many innovations died because someone in authority said impossible? How many ideas were never attempted because leaders surrendered too early? The tragedy is not in failing after trying. The tragedy is in never trying because of one word. Here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, ban impossible from your vocabulary. When you hear it from others, push back. Ask, what would make it possible? Demand specifics. Force the brain to move from finality to curiosity. You'll be surprised how quickly doors reopen when people are not allowed to close them with language. Leadership is not about pretending everything can be done. It is about refusing to let fear dictate what cannot be done. The future belongs to those who push against the walls of impossible until cracks appear. So tonight, ask yourself this. When your people face their next obstacle, will you be the leader who declares it impossible, or the one who dares them to prove the word wrong? The 6th forbidden word in leadership may sound harmless, but it is the most common escape hatch for weak authority. Later. It slips off the tongue with ease. A leader says, "We'll handle it later," or "Let's talk later." And just like that, urgency dies. Later feels like a plan, but in reality it is a polite way of saying, "Not now," and probably not ever. For a team hungry for clarity, later is betrayal disguised as patience. Picture this. A team gathers around a problem that's been dragging for weeks. They look to their leader, expecting resolution, expecting a decision. Instead, they hear, "We'll fix it later." The oxygen is sucked out of the room. Everyone knows what that means. The problem will continue, the frustration will grow, and the solution will never come. Later becomes the graveyard of momentum. Why does later damage leadership so deeply? Because leadership is measured in moments, and every moment wasted erodes trust. Teams don't follow leaders for vague promises. They follow leaders for action. When leaders delay, they teach their teams that delay is acceptable. And soon the culture itself begins to rot. Later spreads like a virus, infecting accountability until nothing gets done. Some will defend it. They'll argue that timing matters, that sometimes waiting is wise. True, strategy often requires patience, but patience is not the same as postponement. A wise leader can say, "We will act when X happens, and that will be by Y date." That's clarity. Later has no clarity. It is procrastination dressed in leadership clothing. Look at history. Companies that embraced later were devoured by faster rivals. Nokia said they'd catch up with smartphones later. Blockbuster said they'd deal with streaming later. Sears said they'd respond to e-commerce later. Later didn't just cost them time, it cost them existence. Meanwhile, leaders who acted fast, even imperfectly, owned the future. The truth is this: teams don't need perfection. They need direction. They can forgive mistakes made in motion, but they will never forgive paralysis disguised as later. A bad decision corrected tomorrow is better than no decision left to rot forever. So what do strong leaders say instead? They banish later and replace it with specific commitments. Instead of, "We'll discuss it later," they say, "We'll meet Thursday at 9 a.m. Instead of, "We'll fix it later," they say, "We'll fix it today," even if the fix is temporary. Instead of, "We'll decide later," they say, "We'll decide by end of day." These small commitments create urgency, and urgency drives results. Here's a practical exercise. For 1 week, notice every time you or your team says later. Write it down. Then force yourself to answer the question, if not now, when? Attach a real time, a real date, and real accountability. You'll see the culture shift almost overnight. Excuses fade, action rises. Some may still argue, what if circumstances really do require waiting? Then say so. Replace later with, "We will act once X is achieved." Anchor it to something concrete. Ambiguity is what kills momentum, not waiting itself. Teams can endure delay if they understand why and when it ends. What they cannot endure is endless postponement wrapped in the fog of later. Leadership is not about being busy. It is about moving things forward. Every time you say later, you gamble with the loyalty and trust of your people. Eventually, they will stop believing you mean later at all. They will hear never. And once your words are translated as lies, your authority is finished. So here's the challenge. The next time later tempts your lips, replace it with a decision. Now or when? Today or tomorrow? This week or next? Refuse to let ambiguity kill your credibility. Because here is the final truth. Leaders who live in later never lead at all. They are caretakers of stagnation, managers of delay. Leaders who reject later are builders of momentum, protectors of urgency, creators of progress. So ask yourself this. Tomorrow, when your people ask for direction, will you hide behind later, or will you give them a leader who acts in the now? The seventh forbidden word in leadership seems like a small detail, but it reshapes the entire atmosphere of a team. Problem. When a leader calls something a problem, it instantly feels heavy, immovable, and discouraging. The word drags energy down like an anchor. It signals to the team, this is trouble, this is danger, this is pain. Yet the same issue, framed as a challenge, lifts the spirit. A challenge is something to rise to, something to overcome, something that tests and strengthens. The situation is identical. The difference is the word. Picture two leaders standing before their teams in the middle of a crisis. The first says, "We have a big problem." The room grows tense. People shrink in their seats. Fear spreads. The second says, "We face a serious challenge." Suddenly heads lift, eyes sharpen. There is still tension, but it has purpose. The team feels called to battle, not called to despair. One word split the paths of emotion. Fear versus determination. This is why language matters so much. Leaders are not only decision makers, they are frame setters. They define reality through the words they choose. When they call setbacks problems, they cultivate a culture of avoidance. When they call them challenges, they build a culture of resilience. People learn whether to hide or to fight, all depending on the words that echo from the top. Some will argue that problem is just honesty, that calling something a challenge risks downplaying the seriousness. But this misunderstands the psychology of teams. Naming something a challenge does not deny its seriousness. It denies despair. It communicates belief that, however difficult, the team has the power to respond. That belief is oxygen to morale. History is filled with leaders who reframed problems as challenges. Franklin D. Roosevelt, facing the Great Depression, never told Americans, "We have an unsolvable problem." He said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." He reframed despair into courage. Apollo 13 was never described by NASA as an unsolvable problem. It was called a mission challenge, and the engineers, fueled by that framing, brought the astronauts safely home. So how can you, as a leader, make this shift in daily practice? Start by catching the word problem before it leaves your mouth. Replace it with challenge, opportunity, or mission. For example, instead of "we have a staffing problem," say "we have a staffing challenge and we will meet it." Instead of "we have a budget problem," say "we face a budget challenge that will sharpen our priorities." Instead of "this is a serious problem," say "this is a serious challenge that will test us." Notice how the emotional climate shifts instantly. Problems drain, challenges charge. Now, let's get practical. For the next week, keep track of how often your team uses the word problem. Each time, reframe it on the spot. If someone says, "We've got a logistics problem," you reply, "We have a logistics challenge, and here's how we'll respond." By modeling the reframing, you retrain the culture. Slowly, people stop dreading issues and start tackling them. This does not mean sugarcoating reality. Calling something a challenge does not magically make it easy. It simply aligns your language with the mindset required to succeed. People rise to challenges. They avoid problems. The word is the spark that tells them whether to engage or retreat. So here's the challenge for you. Listen closely this week. When a crisis comes, and it will, what word will slip from your lips? Will you label it a problem and see your team sag? Or will you call it a challenge and watch them rise? Because in leadership, reality is not only what happens, it is also how you name it. The eighth forbidden word in leadership is tricky, because on the surface it looks polite, even humble. Sorry. Now let's be clear. Apologies have their place. A leader who never apologizes becomes arrogant, disconnected, and despised. But a leader who overuses sorry drains their authority drip by drip until no one takes them seriously. An apology used wisely restores trust. An apology abused signals weakness. Picture a manager addressing their team after a tough meeting. Instead of standing tall, they begin every sentence with sorry. Sorry I took your time. Sorry the decision isn't clear. Sorry the workload is heavy. What happens? At first, the team might nod sympathetically, but over time, constant apologies chip away at respect. The leader appears fragile, almost begging for approval. Authority evaporates. Why is this so dangerous? Because leadership depends on confidence. Followers look to their leaders not only for direction, but for stability. If every interaction is drenched in apology, the message is, I'm not sure I deserve to lead you. And if the leader doesn't believe it, why should anyone else? The truth is that sorry should be rare, sharp, and meaningful. A sincere apology spoken at the right moment shows integrity. It tells people you are accountable, you see the impact of your actions, and you value relationships over ego. But when sorry is tossed around carelessly, it becomes noise, and noise in leadership is deadly. Think about this. What if Winston Churchill had addressed Britain in 1940 by saying, "Sorry this war is so difficult"? What if Steve Jobs had apologized for demanding excellence from his team? What if Martin Luther King Jr. had said, "Sorry for disturbing you with this dream"? History would have laughed, not listened. Leaders who change the world are not excessive apologizers. They are conviction builders. Still, let's acknowledge the counter-argument. Isn't humility important? Don't people respect leaders who can admit mistakes? Absolutely. But humility is not the same as self-erasure. The right apology has weight because it is not overused. Like currency, the more you print it, the less valuable it becomes. Over-apologizing is not humility, it's insecurity. And insecurity spreads, so how should leaders handle sorry? 3 rules. Apologize when you've broken trust. Not for small inconveniences, but for real harm. Apologize once with clarity, then move to action. Endless repetition signals weakness. Replace weak apologies with gratitude. Instead of, "Sorry for the wait," say, "Thank you for your patience." Instead of, "Sorry I'm late," say, "Thank you for waiting." Gratitude builds connection. Apology overuse builds distance. Try this for a week. Every time you feel sorry rising in your throat, pause. Ask, am I apologizing because I've caused harm or because I'm uncomfortable? If it's the latter, replace it with gratitude or a firm statement. You'll notice people respect your words more when they are not diluted with endless apology. This shift changes the energy of the room. A leader who says, "I'm sorry, I'll try," signals fragility. A leader who says, "I appreciate your patience. Here's what we'll do," signals strength. Both acknowledge the situation, but only one maintains authority. Leadership requires a balance of humility and confidence. Too little humility, and you become a tyrant. Too little confidence, and you become a doormat. Sorry, is the pivot point. Use it carefully, strategically, and it will strengthen trust. Use it constantly, and it will erode everything you stand on. So here's the question for you. The next time pressure builds and all eyes turn to you, will you drown your authority with unnecessary sorry, or will you reserve that word for the rare moments when it matters most? The ninth forbidden word in leadership is one that seems harmless, even flattering, but it eats away at responsibility. Lucky. When leaders attribute success to luck, they rob their teams of recognition, diminish their own credibility, and cheapen the very effort that built the result. To say we were lucky is to deny the sweat, skill, and sacrifice that made victory possible. Luck may play a role in life, but it is never the foundation of leadership. Imagine this. A team spends months grinding late nights, solving endless problems, and finally delivers a breakthrough product. The press asks the CEO how they did it. If the leader shrugs and says, "We just got lucky," how do those employees feel? Their blood, their sacrifice, their brilliance, swept aside as chance. What motivation remains to work just as hard next time, if their leader treats success like a lottery ticket? The danger of lucky is subtle but deadly. Leaders who use it think they sound humble. They believe they're avoiding arrogance, but in reality, they're eroding ownership. Teams don't need leaders to act like fate is in charge. They need leaders to affirm that human action matters. Humility is admirable. Surrendering credit to randomness is not. History punishes leaders who lean on luck. Rome didn't conquer the Mediterranean because of luck. It was discipline, structure, and relentless strategy. Thomas Edison didn't get lucky after thousands of failed experiments. He persevered. SpaceX didn't land rockets by luck. It was engineering brilliance married to obsessive iteration. To call these achievements luck insults not just the leaders, but every hand that carried the mission. Of course, let's consider the counterpoint. Isn't it honest to acknowledge luck? Don't opportunities sometimes come by chance? Yes, but the critical distinction is this. Chance may open a door, but only preparation walks through it. A leader's role is not to credit chance, it is to honor preparation. Saying, "We were ready when opportunity came," inspires. Saying, "We were lucky," deflates. So what should strong leaders say instead? Replace lucky with words of recognition and responsibility. For example, instead of, "We were lucky this worked," say, "We executed with precision and it worked." Instead of, "We're lucky to have these results," say, "We're grateful for the team's relentless work." Instead of, "We got lucky," say, "We were prepared when the chance arrived." These shifts maintain humility without surrendering ownership. They tell people that effort matters, that discipline pays off, and that their sacrifices are seen. Try this exercise. For 1 week, notice when you feel tempted to say lucky. Replace it with a statement of preparation or gratitude. Instead of telling your child they were lucky to pass a test, tell them, "Your studying paid off." Instead of telling your team they were lucky to win a deal, tell them, "Your persistence secured it." Watch how much more empowered they feel. Leadership is about building belief in cause and effect, that effort leads to progress, that discipline creates results. Lucky severs that link. It whispers that success is outside of human control, that effort is meaningless. And once people believe that, they stop trying. Nothing kills motivation faster than thinking results are random. So here's your final test. The next time success lands in your lap, will you weaken it by calling it luck? Or will you strengthen it by honoring the preparation, discipline, and courage that truly made it possible? The 10th forbidden word in leadership is deceptively simple, yet it is poison to ambition. Fine. On the surface, it sounds safe. A leader says, "The numbers are fine," or "The project is fine." But underneath, fine is mediocrity in disguise. It signals complacency. It tells the team that average is acceptable, that good enough is good enough. For a leader, there is no greater betrayal. Because the moment you accept fine, you kill the drive for excellence. Picture a manager reviewing a team's hard work. The group leans forward, eager for feedback, hoping to hear what can be improved. The leader glances at the report, shrugs, and says, "It's fine." What happens? Energy drops. Motivation evaporates. The team knows they aimed for greatness but received indifference. Nothing kills innovation faster than the sense that no matter how much effort you bring, the leader only sees fine. Why is fine so dangerous? Because leadership is about vision. Teams look to leaders for standards higher than their own, for the push that elevates them beyond what they thought possible. When a leader accepts fine, they lower the bar not only for themselves, but for everyone who follows. Over time, fine becomes the culture. Meetings are fine, products are fine, performance is fine. And then one day, the competition destroys you, because while you were satisfied with fine, they were chasing excellence. History shows this pattern again and again. Once great companies collapse not from disaster, but from complacency. They didn't demand better. They accepted fine. Sears was fine until Amazon redefined retail. BlackBerry was fine until Apple redefined smartphones. Leaders in those organizations saw decent numbers, average performance, and told themselves it was fine. That word blinded them to the urgency of change. Of course, there's a counter-argument. Isn't it good to appreciate stability? Isn't fine better than bad? Yes, but leadership is not about settling for not bad. Leadership is about refusing to settle. Great leaders are grateful for progress while hungry for more. They can say, "This is good, but we will make it great." They never stop at fine. So how do you banish fine from your vocabulary? Replace it with the language of growth. Instead of, "The results are fine," say, "The results are good, and here's how we'll make them better." Instead of, "The product is fine," say, "The product works, and now let's raise the standard." Instead of, "It's fine," say, "It's a start, but not the finish." These small shifts change culture. They teach your people that effort is noticed, but improvement is always expected. They create an atmosphere where excellence is normal, where mediocrity cannot hide under the blanket of fine. Here's a challenge for the week. Every time you catch yourself about to say fine, pause. Ask yourself, is this truly excellent? If not, what's missing? Then speak that truth. Encourage progress, demand improvement, and set the bar one level higher. You'll see your team begin to stretch, to innovate, to refuse mediocrity, because you refused it first. Leadership is not about being satisfied with fine. It is about being restless, ambitious, and relentless for better. The moment you choose fine, you choose decline. The moment you reject it, you choose growth. So I leave you with this final question. When history remembers your leadership, will it say you were the leader who settled for fine, or the leader who demanded greatness? You've now discovered the 10 words no true leader should ever use. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Leadership is not built on theory, It's built on practice. Starting today, strip these words from your vocabulary. Replace them with clarity, power, and conviction. And watch how people respond to you differently. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts below. Tell me which word you'll erase first. And subscribe so you never miss the next journey we take together. Because in the end, leadership is choice. And the words you choose will define the legacy you leave.